Okay, good day, colleagues. It's 1 minute past 12, and we have enough people in attendance to get going. Welcome to our, is it our fourth Ingxoxo? I'm very happy to see the regulars. I'm very happy to see the new faces. I'm very excited. I said this is our fourth Ingxoxo, and I can see that the DVC is also in attendance. And DVC, as you have indicated yesterday, marked a month since we started with online teaching and learning. And I hope everyone heeded the DVC's call and attempted the dance of joy. It is important, colleagues, to acknowledge strides made and not to allow ourselves to be paralyzed or overcome by the challenges because we have achieved so much. These sessions, once again, are about supporting one another. We gather here to share what works. We learn from our students, we learn from ourselves, but what we have decided as the LT Collab is that from this week going forward, the emphasis is going to be on maximizing student engagement. Last week, I mentioned the importance of encouraging one another and further exploring ways of, or new ways of facilitating and engaging students for better and effective learning. We will continue to highlight, colleagues, student engagement and what we can do to maximize student involvement and making sure that they really benefit from these online sessions. During the week, can't remember whether I get confused with days of the week, I had an interview with Umhlobo Wenene, and one person called in, starting from, I don't know whether it's Northwest, sharing her experiences of her first ever online examination, but she was saying it was not an exam, it felt like one. The lecturer said it was an open book test. And she was so nervous and confused, and she felt that it was lonely and difficult. She missed being in the company of other students. So there's so much that our students are struggling with. Hence, we are putting emphasis on us making sure that they are not alone and we provide them with all the support that they need. And we also appreciate the DVC's encouragement and participation in this platform because her presence and her encouragement is keeping us going. So without wasting any time, I am going to hand over to the presenters. The first person to present is JP. JP, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toni and team for the opportunity and the platform. Good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to share this very short presentation with you. Champ, can you maybe just acknowledge when you see my shared screen, please?
It's still coming, JP.
It's still coming. It's there.
Is it
gone?
Okay.
Yep.
Susan, you can go and make a tiki. We need to wait for Chris to join. So, how was the queue on Monday? Did you manage to get your OROS? Oh wait, my camera's not on, so you can't see that I'm making these bunny ears with OROS, but you know what I mean. Okay, Chris is online. Let's start. Susan, tilt to screen. All I can see is nostrils. Okay, I would like to welcome you all. Shh! I'm in our movie club Zoom meeting. Apologies for that. Like I said, Welcome all to our movie club meeting. Today we will discuss the blockbuster from Stephen King, COVID versus the Japanator. Ooh. Wow. I don't know about you, but it felt so real. But let's dive into the discussion. I think the context is very important. Leading character, Jean-Pierre, or JP, as he's known in the movie, is a senior lecturer in the Department of Architecture. Pretty young, I must say, but been teaching for 7 years now. One can summarize his 7 modules into 3 offering types. The first being theory-based modules, such as the undergraduate architectural theory module to the first-year students. Secondly, the computer-based modules, which stretches between the 2nd and 3rd-year undergrad to honors level. And lastly, design-based modules, such as the first-year undergraduate design and first and second-year presentation module. His classes range between 40 to 45 students. It was not a surprise that we were faced with the current to-date image right up in the start of the movie. Let's unpack that image by discussing the type of modules in this club meeting. The nature of architectural design is that it contains a deeply theoretical component with a practical application in the form of a studio design project. The final outcome of the design project is just as important as the design process. Therefore, traditionally, studio-based education formed the basis for architectural education due to the interactive nature of the program. For today's discussion of COVID and the Japanator, I would like us to focus on the first-year undergrad component of the movie, as when the COVID monster attacked. The students had less than 6 weeks of university experience and was now forced to learn not only the life of a student, but the life of an online student. What came out very clear as the time went by was that constant communication with the students was crucial, and to communicate on multiple platforms to reach more students, such as Moodle chats and messages, email, WhatsApp, and Microsoft Teams. Thankfully, all the students were on Teams before the start of COVID, as the platform is used within his classes. Therefore, the transition to the platform did not interfere with the ongoing online process. The communication helped to put the students at ease, as they knew that a plan of action was made, even if it changed as time went by. An informed student is a powerful student. Secondly, his focus was shifted to the content. Removing the studio from the lecturing experience now also meant that one must be super vigilant and critical to what one present on a presentation during a lecture. Lectures can sometimes be very cryptical on PowerPoint and then move into 1,000 different routes while they're presenting. And that caused him to critically review his slides. Simple voiceovers was used in PowerPoint using the draw tools available in the platform. The PowerPoint was saved as both shows as well as video formats and then uploaded to YouTube for students to engage with the content data free. The platforms played a vital role to the success of the presentation seen at the start of the movie. How do you simulate a studio in a virtual space? It needs to be dynamic, full of energy, and it needs to be inspirational. Many different routes or scenarios could have been prepared, but with that, the brain is constantly filled with negativity, and therefore, his standpoint was that there's a plan of action, and that was communicated to the students. That this showcased confidence and leadership, but to quote him, no student is left behind. And that was the case. From the 40 students, 36 students submitted the 5-week project on time, where 4 students fell behind slightly, and he worked with those students through WhatsApp to constantly motivate and inspire. These students submitted their project just 1 week later. Long team meetings were held to a minimum to save data, and therefore the content that was shared had to be precise, to the point, and informative, and in a language that students can understand. As mentioned earlier, the design process was new to the first years. In fact, this was their first solo design project, and to achieve the outcome, a workshop approach was taken using the workshop activity on Moodle. This simulated the studio. As students submitted their work, it was peer-reviewed by fellow students and by staff. This helped students not to feel lonely or isolated as they engage with other students virtually. In his studio, he has 2 part-time staff assisting him as well. He from the start said that he need to protect that identity, the studio identity and studio culture, as students learn from lecturers, from their peers, and from self-study. Interaction on an individual level was obtained by working with OneNote Classroom directly in Teams. Students uploaded their design projects into their space. It was then critiqued by him and his team by using text, drawing ability, and also voice notes on the platform. This enriched the quality of the feedback. The schedule made for the students helped them to stay on track, as they are really overwhelmed with the online environment, and time management is not the strongest point of a fresh first-year student. Feedback sessions were held with the class on Microsoft Teams. InVision Freehand assisted to talk to diagrams where staff and students can take control of the screen and work together on a drawing. A summary of the day's crits were given to the class reps on a WhatsApp group via a voice note to share with the class. This ensured that students will still receive feedback from a group scenario and not just feedback of their own work. Teams really assisted the 3-member design team to work together from an admin point. Although the main lecturer is JP, the success of design is that students receive as many uplifting comments from as many professionals as possible to make informed design decisions. The file section allowed the team to make daily comments on each student, and the next day, as the students are assigned to new staff members, the particular staff member can see what was said the previous day, this allowing crits to move forward and not restarting the design process, thus saving students time. At the beginning of the 3-week lockdown period, the class really missed each other and the social interaction they had in class. An initiative was started, the hashtag Lockdown Drawing Challenge. Daily, the students made a sketch, wrote a poem, or made a doodle and uploaded that to a dedicated channel. That kept the spirit high, and it showed the connection that was in the class.
By fostering the comfort of my home. It is motivating, effective, and sufficient. It has taught me dedication and time management to complete the academic year. Due to my lecturers being as approachable and available as they are at any time of the day, as well as creating online workshops, press, and video recording of lectures, making online learning effective, easy, and sufficient.
I'm a first-year architecture student, and my experience with online learning has been positive. Our lectures have created extremely informative and understandable slideshows which aid us in completing projects, assignments, or tasks. They've made themselves readily available and are extremely attentive to any inquiries, whether they be emails or messages on Teams. The platforms themselves, Moodle and Teams, allow us to submit our work and receive extremely informative feedback, especially being a practical subject. overall the experience has been positive.
In closing, my dear friends, Suzanne, I'm seeing your nostrils again. The movie is a true horror. There were uncertain times. There were times that really pushed boundaries and also tested the emotional capabilities of the human race. But to me, the success lied in the fact that he saw this not as a one-man show. It was a combined effort between students and him to develop plans and solutions to hurdles that, yes, sometimes some stuff just doesn't work, or an internet connection was too slow, but it all was understood by all, and together the success of 40 students was seen. Okay, you all, stay safe, wash your hands, and wear your mask in public. Until we discuss next week's movie, COVID, the sequel, 50 Shades of COVID. Bye. That is all from my side. I do apologize, colleagues. I was also testing this out for the first time, having a video recording and not presenting myself. The nerves just kicked in a bit much. I do apologize. I know there were parts that were very soft, so I do apologize for that.
Okay. No worries, JP. When we have the discussion later on, we will engage on those aspects that were not really audible. So thank you. We will have a conversation with you later, but for now, I'm going to hand over to Catherine and Aisha.
Great. Aisha, I can't see you. And then Noluthando, you will put the recording up for us.
Can you see me, Catherine?
Great, wonderful. Okay. While we wait for the PowerPoint to come up on the slide, just a very quick introduction to us. So Aisha is the Senior Lecturer for Tax 3 in PE, and I have been teaching Tax 2 for quite a long time here on the George campus, so exactly the same subject. And so we have been working together and collaborating on this.
Okay, are you seeing the screen?
I can see the screen. If you can just run the PowerPoint, please.
Okay.
So just if you can just click on from beginning. And then we can actually move to the next slide. Great, thanks so much. So as we went into COVID and the lockdown, I think for me, as with everybody else, we realized that we had to face these challenges and we had to take stock of where we were. And looking at Tax 3 specifically, our key challenges were really, firstly, that tax is complex and it's difficult. And a lot of the detail and the integration comes through in the classroom. So excellent textbook, but we really needed to help the students make the links. And we weren't really sure what their resources were. And also our material had really been designed for the classroom space. And so we realized that we needed adaptation and we needed to balance engagement and social justice. And so that became top of mind. And as we were approaching the solution to these problems, the focus was also on disciplinary knowledge as well as knowledge practices in Tax 3. And we believe this is aligned with the overall university approach. Next slide, please, Doctor.
So our total enrollments for the semester was 349 students, of which 244 chose Pathway 1. So you can see that's a big number, but still a lot chose Pathway 2. We had a faculty survey that asked a few questions about equipment, whether they have access to a device, internet, Wi-Fi, data, preferred method of communication via email or Moodle or even WhatsApp. And we then decided we need our own survey to determine what type of textbooks do they have access to. This is important because most of our material depends on the textbooks, our questions, our assignments also depends on the textbooks that they have available. So we did our own survey, of which only 187 responded to that. With regards to the content textbook, as you can see, that's Notes on South African Income Tax. So we opted to request for the 2019 or 2020 because there were not significant changes made to the legislation over the period, and only 57.2% had access to that textbook, which is not, yes, it's more than 50%, but it's still not a big number for us. And then most importantly, the next question was the graded questions textbook, and that is where all our assignments come from. And that is very specific. The questions changes every year, so they have to have access to the latest version. And that was at least a bit more than the previous question, 58.2%. So our goal from all of this was we wanted to create a pedagogically sound, accessible online offering for all students, where we use different platforms to engage students and make this course a success. So we'll look at the next slide, please. So our approach was Moodle first, because Moodle is 0 rated, so we're including all our students. So that was our main platform where we communicated with students and all our lecture material. So before lockdown, we had lecture material first, so our lectures, followed up by practice questions, followed up by assignment questions, which they need to do. And then we have a tutorial session where it's face-to-face and the students get to discuss their assignment. So we wanted to make sure that we're still covering all 4 of those steps. So on our Moodle pages, we actually did it a step-by-step approach, and we laid it out quite nicely per topic, following all those steps so that they're still on the same page. And I understand that we are not changing much with regards to the content, and that step-by-step approach. So all our material was loaded on Moodle, and that was before we even started our lockdown period. So we were on the ball with that. We loaded 3 versions, a Microsoft Word version, and then a voice-over PowerPoint, which we talked to, and then that was converted to a video. We also send every week a weekly plan to all our students where they actually understand what is required for them for the next week. So we'll send it out on a Thursday for the following week. That will be detailed from lectures to tutorials to practice questions. What do we plan? What do we expect from them? And that was just to shrink the change and make sure that everyone's on the same page and don't add any extra burden on the students. With regards to our assignment questions, because of our survey that we received that only 58% of our students have access to the textbook, we then created alternative assignment questions for the students that do not have access. So that's 78 students out of the 187 that answered the survey. And that took a bit of time. However, we feel that that added a lot of value to the students. We then also, for our assignment sessions, our tutorial classes, we also had voice-over discussions on that, as well as word solutions. We have weekly Moodle chat classrooms to still have the face-to-face sessions. So where we do discuss key points of our tutorials, and I'll chat about that a bit more. And all of this was supplemented with live Microsoft Teams power sessions, which Catherine will talk to in a bit. And then on responsive approaches, other than what we normally do, we created additional examples based on students' questions and queries. We used Moodle quizzes just to test where the students are at, to see if we need to do anything else, PowerPoint and H5P. That was a lot. Next slide, please. So this is just an analysis of our engagement over the 5 weeks. So we started on the 27th of April, and this is officially our last week. Because this is a third year module, we gave them a week off based on feedback that we received from the students because they were a bit overwhelmed by the workload. So our third year modules are all within our department. So as a team, we decided to give the students a week off just so that they can catch up. Obviously, the online platform is taking a bit of a toll. Please note that all of these percentages are based on the registered number of students for the module. However, if we do have to use the pathway 1 number of students, which is 244, it will increase the percentages much more. I don't think I'll speak more about this. You guys can see it's quite plain, set out quite nicely. Next slide, please. So just some reflections on the Moodle chats, tutorials and classes. So on the assignment questions, students need to submit every week. And then we have the tutorial chats and also lecture classes where they can ask questions. So our initial intention with this was to still have the face-to-face live interaction with the students where they could ask questions regarding the work that we covered that week. However, the Moodle chat, it was quite awkward. Some students would log in and they wouldn't ask any questions. They would just sit and not say anything. And because it wasn't compulsory, the participation was very low. So we changed the approach with the lectures and the tutorial sessions. We rather gave them ideas on how to tackle the work that was allocated for the week, also give them key principles, try to summarize what they need to take out of that week. And because of that change to our approach, our views then increased, and this new approach still allowed us to reinforce what the learning objectives and the outcomes are, which we need to focus on because then students understand what their ultimate goal of that topic is. And then also still maintain that initial intention where they can ask questions if they feel they need to. And students that are not up to date with their work were still able to view these past chat sessions, which still benefited them as well. Next slide, please.
Great. Thanks so much, Asha. I just want to quickly reflect on this H5P interactive content on Moodle, because I think it's such a powerful tool for an asynchronous mini class where you can get quite complicated concepts across. One thing that I found terribly useful is you can put a little interactive quiz into it, and then if the student clicks on the wrong choice, you can give them immediate feedback and guidance. So if you know of the mistakes students often make, you can anticipate those. You'll see I've got a happy and a sad face. I'm happy that 101 students have viewed this, but it does tell me that a lot of students haven't. And I know from marking these exams for many years that this is something the students don't do well, and so it's something they need extra work on. So the strategy now is to use that data that's coming from Moodle and to follow up when revision time starts now to remind the students that this is something they really need to do. Could I have the next slide, please? And the next thing I'm going to just talk about quickly is the question to teams or not to teams. And I think Microsoft Teams is such a powerful tool, but how do we use it and can we use it? And so we just had the weekly power sessions. So they were quite short lectures, and essentially we sent pre-reading. We told the students they must have pre-read, and then we did it as a Teams meeting. You've got to manage that carefully, and I really find that you've got to practice quite a bit, and then you get good at it and you learn how to manage with the students. just two things that I've learned that I'd love to share. And the first one that I've bolded under my important learning was having a co-pilot has been absolutely amazing. So Asha is always on the lecture with me. And what she then does is she helps me if I just check that everything is working and troubleshoots. And then as the questions get asked in the chat function, she answers them even as I'm lecturing. So I don't have to think about that. And it's really worked nicely. I'm so grateful to her, and I think it's been fantastic. The other thing I've realized is you have to take a break quite often. For some reason, this format is exhausting for the lecturer and for the students. And as soon as we started taking breaks, I got feedback from the students to say, this is working, it's a good thing. If we can go to the next slide, and on the next slide is really just some of the feedback that we got from the students. And I think in conclusion around the teams for me, I wouldn't present it as the only content because the students can't necessarily access it. But if they're using Moodle as a 0 rated and they want to be on Teams, they can use some of the university allocated data. So I think we can say that all the students can if they want to. We've really started to get more engagement, and I'm trying to draw more engagement out of the students, but there's still learning to happen there. And then I think my summary is we've had great feedback from the students who do attend. They love it, but we have had patchy attendance. So it would be great if we could increase that. If we can go on to the next slide. Could we have the next slide?
I am trying, but this thing has decided to freeze on me.
I'll tell you what, it's the concluding slide. So I'm going to just through it as we, and essentially I've just concluded by saying curriculum renewal in the time of COVID-19. We seek pathways to persistent resilience. I think that we should apply the lessons that we are all learning as we go forward. We should be flexible in the reimagining of our practice. We should continue to collaborate and to train both ourselves and each other, and to research all the rich data that is coming out of the platforms and from our students. And then I really feel as we go further in this process that we must always be mindful of the need for social justice, because if we do these things, then I believe that we will be able to change the world. So thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you to the three of you. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Aisha and JP. I'm going to open the floor. I'm trying to see participants so that I can see if there are hands on, so that we can engage. I am very much motivated by the fact that we're saying, and we are committed to not leaving any student behind and being flexible, and I can attest to the benefits of doing things as a team instead of flying solo. We have seen positive results thereof, even on our team, the LT Collab team. So thank you to the three of you. Colleagues who are in attendance, I'm looking and wanting to see if you want to get going with the conversation. Remember, this is a conversation. We have people who contribute first, but it's a platform for all of us to engage. I don't see any hands up. Okay, I can see from Ellen say, hi, Ellen, not sure about HP5 on handheld devices. Can I ask Catherine to respond to that?
Hi, Dr. Toni. I see Catherine has responded. It's Ellen speaking. I just had some feedback from my students who who use predominantly handheld devices, and I have tried to use H5P, and the response from my students on handheld devices is less enthusiastic. So I was just wondering if anyone else had had a similar issue. Thanks.
Ellen, I must say I haven't actually tested that, and it's a very good point. So thank you for raising it.
Okay. Any other contributions?
Yeah, perhaps just on the same point then, just about the handheld devices. You know, many of my first year students do use handheld devices. So I am sometimes having to color in between the lines to make sure that the handheld device, as device of necessity rather than choice, allows students access. So for example, I had a terrible 2 days now because I had been teaching academic writing, and there's a fabulous function on Moodle where you can drag and drop sentences into the paragraph. And those of you who know about paragraphs will know what an amazing function that is. But the drag and drop function on the Moodle site doesn't work very well if one has downloaded Moodle or one is using Moodle on one's handheld device from the website. One has to rather have downloaded the Moodle application on one's handheld device. And on the Hisense handheld devices, this is proven to be very tricky to download the Moodle app. This is possibly a small number of students are impacted by, but I had to immediately, based on what Catherine and Aisha also said earlier, I had to immediately scrap that and redo the question so that it didn't negatively impact on any students at all. So these are the sorts of things that we're obviously catching ourselves having to fix as we go along.
Thank you for that contribution, Ellen. We are learning as we go along. I also did not realize that I was not so good with my cell phone when I had to download Teams, because I'm so used to my laptop. So the more we use these things, the more we get better. I wanted to discuss briefly about the importance of communication. Aisha and Catherine spoke about communicating weekly. Some people find it overwhelming, especially when people have 2 or 3 modules. My question is, how do you make it manageable? I know it is important, and I'm pushing for that students must not feel alone. They need to feel that they are supported and their lecturers are there. I'm trying to get advice from Catherine and Aisha as to the system that you use to make sure that you are not overwhelmed by the administrative duties.
I agree, it is an administrative, you can overwhelm the student very quickly by sending all of these emails. So we try to always summarize the whole week in one email so that we're not having to send bits and pieces all the time. And you can always use the forum option on Moodle, so you don't need to send an email and a forum. So you do one thing which goes to all your students. And if they can't access it, it's still on Moodle, which they can use and view at any point in time. I know some students don't even check emails, some do just access Moodle, so it's still there for them to access. So one email with everything for the week, that is what I've tried to do, to have it all summarized and not having to send bits and pieces, because our students are 3rd year, and so they do 4 subjects. So if we're sending 4 emails a week from 4 different modules, it is quite overwhelming. And I don't know if our other modules are doing that as well. So one email summarized is our approach. Through Moodle, everyone gets it through that platform.
Okay, thanks, Aisha. I see Andrew's hand. Andrew, go ahead.
Thanks, Doc. I just want to thank the presenters as well. I really enjoyed your presentations. They were really wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I just have a statement and maybe a reply and a few questions. I did attempt to use the H5P tool, and I use an interactive video as well on my phone. It was a request from a staff member who wants to try use the H5P interactive video. I tried on my phone, and as long as I had the interactive video on, I'll say landscape mode on my phone. So I have my phone in landscape mode. I said it worked really well. A question for Catherine. The data that you got from the questions inside your interactive video, do they tell you how many times they attempted the quiz, or they tell you if they got the question wrong in that part? Or is it that the automatic response that the students get and then they can look at that? Just really want to check the data that you actually get from those quizzes in interactive video. And for JP, really enjoy that as well. I see your students are using Teams. Did you use the assignment tool inside Teams? Because I see you use the OneNote notebook for your feedback and for interaction, and the draw features there, which are amazing. But do you use the Teams platform to submit assignments there as well, or is it just to engage with the students there? Thank you.
Catherine, you can go first.
Thanks for that question. It's a very good question. At the moment, the only data that I've taken so far is to draw an activity log of who accessed it and how many times, because I was looking to see how many individual students had accessed the interactive example. And then I also took a sneak peek at what time they were accessing it. So for example, one of my students that I know often is very sleepy in class was the one who accessed it at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I think that question is very well put. If we can go in and get a feel for how they are answering, the questions and how quickly they're getting to the correct answers, that's definitely going to guide us. And I think that's definitely something I'm very interested in interrogating further, but I don't have great visibility at this stage.
JP, thanks, Kat.
Thank you, Andrew. From a Teams perspective, we only use or is using Teams for both having our meetings or feedback sessions. And then that notebook is very handy for us to be able to get live discussions with students being able to draw, us being able to draw, and to also make notes as we go along. The submissions, however, I kept that using Moodle just for the assistance with data free. It's more accessible and it's a little bit more stable. Here and there, I do have problems with OneNote not allowing students to upload, because they will be drawing, taking a photograph with their phone and then uploading it. And sometimes the phones doesn't really subscribe or code that correctly. And there's a little bit of an error uploading it to Teams. So we stuck to using Moodle as our official platform for handing out the project brief, handing out the lectures, the workshop activity, and then the internal crits, or the week or two of individual crits happened on Teams. And then again, the final submission was also, so I can actually download that. I can use my software to mark, to write feedback and comments, repost. And it's also a good way for me to track my, the process and the progress, should I need to comment on any student activity.
Okay. Thank you, JP. Andrew, is your hand still up, or you did not lower it? You have another question.
I do have just a small follow-up question.
Okay.
Just to both JP and to Catherine, thank you so much for your responses. I just want to check, was there any training for the students or a simulation into Teams, or did they just do this on their own? And how fast was that? Were there any queries in terms of training and how to work this out? Thank you.
You can go first, JP, since you're on.
From my side, so when we when I supplied my students with the plan of action going into the 6-7 weeks of lectures, I once again made a very small video recording like I did for today, not a PowerPoint, but a recording on explaining the schedule. So I made my schedule daily and the kind of activities that happen, because our design module is over 3 days, along with explaining how we will be tackling the online experience. I gave them proper Moodle training again, just to go through, this is where you will see the interface. This means an assignment. You click here, you will then have to click here again to submit. This is the forum, this is how you use it. So I just made sure that although we went over that in class in the beginning of the year, I just made sure that I gave it again to them just to refresh them. And that also included a team component. So I went through how to make the calls, how to message, how to access OneNote, what's the meaning of the collaboration space in OneNote Classroom, and the different components. Once again, I'm a very strong believer in an informed student is a powerful student. You know, that's how our students can really succeed during this time.
Thanks, JP. Kat?
Great. Also a very good question. I think firstly for Moodle, our department has been using Moodle extensively for quite a long time. So by the time we got to lockdown, the students were already very familiar with the platform. They were already uploading their assignments and using the platform to retrieve their notes, etc. already. So that transition, in my experience, was seamless, because we really only added detail and then advised on any changes through our email. I think Teams is a little bit more interesting because it was new to everybody. We didn't have training as such, but what we did was we sent out quite a detailed email. Actually, before each of the sessions, I don't do as much detail anymore because the students are more accustomed to it, but really to tell them how and to try to troubleshoot on things we knew might go wrong. And I have found, perhaps Aisha can also advise because she was more involved in the troubleshooting, but I found that the students took to it quite easily. So we didn't really have a lot of trouble with the students who chose to use Teams. That being said, we didn't use a lot of the functionality. It was more of a class. So I think that if we were to become more sophisticated in our use of Teams, that a more formalized process of training would definitely be beneficial down the line.
Thanks, Catherine. Last word from Aisha before I hand over to Jenny. Aisha, your last word.
Thank you. So with regards to Teams, so as Catherine said, we're not using it as a formal platform. So before Catherine started using it as a lecturing platform, we were using it as well as a chatting tool. So that was the week that we started. So from the 27th of April, I've added the whole classroom onto Teams, and just as a chat platform, also where we send motivational messages to them, just so that they can get familiar with that platform as well. So that made it much more easier when Catherine started with her lecturing, because then they were more used to that platform when we started with that. So I think that benefited us as well. But with the troubleshooting, I must say it really worked quite well. If maybe they couldn't hear, or maybe they joined the wrong classroom or the wrong link, we sorted out that quite quickly and they helped each other. So that also worked quite well. So I think if we use that platform more, as Catherine said, we will have to use do some form of training for ourselves and for them, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Aisha. Jenny, over to you.
Thank you, Nolo. Let me just find this. Thank you very much. And thank you so much to all the presenters this morning for wonderful presentations. It really has been extraordinary to be listening as the data and the insights become richer and richer and richer as we move through this seminar series, it really is turning out to be an extraordinary repository of wonderful practice. For me, there are many things I want to comment on very briefly, but there were two lessons that really stood out for me today. The first one was something that came from JP, and I think it's absolutely crucial, and that is an informed student is a powerful student. In a way, it seems like an obvious thing to say, but very often we are nowhere near as explicit giving our information as perhaps we need to be. So going online and realizing that now that you can't interact personally, you can't see the students, you can't work with body language and responses, it's really crucial to be able to be absolutely clear, to engage with more clarity than ever before. So I think that's very, very important. And then something that came from Catherine was the notion of persistent resilience. And if we think about sort of conscious reflections on teaching and learning as one aspect of it is to build a common language so that we can talk to each other, I think persistent resilience really fits beautifully into our common themes that are emerging: positivity, resilience, growing personal and pedagogical insights, adaptability, flexibility. So that's another wonderful term that captures so much of what we're trying to do. So thank you both. Thanks to both presentations and all three of you for those insights. The other thing that occurred to me is that we always, in this context, focus on flexibility, and that's absolutely true. And we need to be flexible. But an important corollary of that is that we need to be flexible, bearing in mind always our disciplinary contexts and constraints. And so flexibility is going to take different forms in different disciplines. Sometimes it may not seem that we're being flexible if we have to keep assessing in a particular way, but when one looks at the needs of the students and the needs of the disciplinary curriculum structure, we realize that it's very, very important to be mindful of flexibility in context. So I would add in context to that call for flexible practice. So other things that emerged for me today, the shifting use of Moodle is very heartening to see. One of the worries, which I'm sure is not going to persist post-COVID and going forward, is simply using Moodle as a dumping ground for a repository for notes and instructions. It really is being used in an extraordinary range of ways. So we're seeing the functionality, the multiple functionality of Moodle coming to life here, which is great. It's happening in the Moodle context, and also wonderfully as we watched a simulated studio through the use of Teams. So the interrelationship between our platforms is also something that emerges as a very important feature of practices emerging in this context. Very interesting a focus on midstream correction. That's part of the ability to be an insightful and risk-taking teacher. You try one thing, it's not working, so you try something else, you get a better result. That's come up before, but the notion of midstream correction was very important, and it came from a question from the floor as well, from Ellen, talking about realizing that the handheld devices weren't as flexible as she had formerly thought, and having to retrace her steps and do something different to manage all the students. And the management and response to all the students, again, emerges as critical. No one needs to be left behind in this, regardless of their access to various forms. And I really do see the presenters in all of these seminars as being very, very committed to shrinking the change, to catering for everybody. I think the other thing that emerges here, which is very, very important, is the importance of collaboration. first of all, across campuses, which is lovely to see. Aisha and Catherine working together across the campus, ensuring even-handedness of input for students. Also, a team-taught experience is always better for the students to see two people instead of one. And JP also picked up on this, the importance of offering students a team-led intervention, working with his colleagues in collaboration, and in that context, offering students a high-level praise from a range of experts, so they get constant affirmation, but not just from one person who might be their special friend, but from a range of teachers that they are engaging with. So I think for the moment, that is all I want to say, other than just again, thank you so much. I really do value listening to these things. They amaze me every time. There's something new and something important for all of us to learn. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. You always do that very well, to synthesize and collate and just lift all the important aspects. So for the closure and the last comments, I will hand over to the DVC. Cheryl, will you please close for us and say your last comments?
Thank you very much, Noluthando and JP, Aisha, Catherine, Jenny, everybody that's contributed. These sessions for me are always my fill up for the week, my lovely moment when I can stop worrying about all the things that are going wrong and just listen to them as best I can to join these sessions. And today I don't have a lot of experience with Moodle, and I have to log into it and maybe put a question or two up, but not much beyond there. So it's been amazing to just listen to the work that all three of you are doing. And I often get comments that, you know, online learning is cold and this, and what all of you are doing is that there's a lot of interactivity and innovation that's going into your work. So I'm really privileged to have listened to you today and to see what you're up to. I also picked up on the sort of co-presenter bit. I certainly find that in meetings, for example, even just with Zoom or Teams, that you're having to worry about who wants to respond and what the chat's happening, and you're also trying to respond to the question that's been thrown at you or the aspect that's being discussed. So I think certainly is good. The other thing that struck me was the social justice engagement side. People wonder whether, you know, the different contexts and complexities, and you're showing just how is possible.
I think we are experiencing some connection problems from the DPC.
I was amazed as well, Ellen, your aspect that's coming in and taking as many students along with us. Is this better?
Yeah, it is now better. You were just gone for a minute there.
Good. No, anyway, but thank you to Gretchen's on the wonderful work that you're doing. Thanks.
Okay. And colleague, that brings us to the end of this session. We will continue with the optimal student engagement for next week as well. We already have people who are excited to share what they are doing. Thank you, and we will circulate the recording of the session and hoping to see most, if not all of you next week again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.